This is educational use only. Our group is allowing our instructor, Mr. Roldan Ardinas, to use this as an educational materials. Good day everyone, and we are the group 2, and my assigned topic is all about the global north and global south divide. So the Brand Report 1983. So let us know when this idea of global north and global south started. So the content of this idea was published by a commission chaired by the former German Chancellor Willy Brandt. If you notice the spelling is not correct, I missed the letter T. The report identified two ideas, which is the global north and the global south. The north, those countries that are above the south 30 degrees north. And the south is a geographic convenience based on the fact that most of the poor world lies south of latitude 30 degrees north, except Australia and New Zealand. So, what is North and South divide? The North and South divide as a socio-economic and political categorization of countries. The Cold War era generalization placed countries into two distinct groups, the North and the South. The North is comprise all first world countries and most second world countries, while the South is comprised of third world countries. This categorization ignores the geographic position of a countries, with some countries in the southern hemisphere such as Australia and New Zealand being labeled part of the North. So what is the global North? Global North is considered as a rich country like United States of America, Canada, Western Europe, and outermost region of European Union, developed parts of Asia, Australia, and New Zealand. So home of all G8. So this means that G8 is most powerful and most rich country all over the world, which is the France, Germany, Italy, United Kingdom, Japan, and the USA, Canada, and Russia. It is more economically developed countries and considered the richer and more stable countries. These countries are contributed industrialization and digital advancements. They have a constant economy and they can normally have a better standard of living and quality of life. While the global south is the poor country, which is the Africa, Latin America, developing Asia, including Middle East. These countries is certainly known as the developing countries, which means the gross domestic products and human development index and generally standard of living with these countries are considered low grade than the countries of the south. Global south contributes to the society mostly in their primary products of natural resources, since they consist of agricultural land, mining fields, and even fishing farms. So there are major difference between the global north and the global south. It is all about the global north: less population, high wealth, high standard of living, high industrial development industry. While the global south is all about high population, low wealth, low standard of living, low industrial agricultural. Global North, the first world, richer and more developed region. 95% has enough food and shelter. Economically, industrial and major business Cameroons and finance textile, lumber, clothing, machinery, leather and wooden goods, railroads constructions, while the global south is a third world, poor and least developed region. 5% has enough food and shelter, source for raw materials of the south. Cotton production depended entirely on cotton and agricultural. So first world and the second world is just the same. They are also rich countries. But the world is all about democratic, while the second world is about the socialists like Russia and China. So the Philippines is belong to the third world. We are not rich but we are democratic. And also South Korea. They are not rich but they are socialist.
Good day, everyone. I'm Nicodem Rosales from Group 2. So, my topic is about how did the global divide develop? So first, we must know what is global divide. Global divide is about the different factors that affect the improvements or advancement of different places all around the globe. There is pre-division before World War I. Distance is no longer a problem or issue. Global divide. Global North. Rich and industrialized countries. Global South. Poor and developing countries. The double divide is caused by political power, economic dependency, and importation or exportation of resources. The term global divide connotes these disparities in income and living conditions between the advanced and developing states. People nowadays are able to interact and communicate with people from different countries all over the world because of technology. Through the use of internet, people have become more aware of the new trends across countries, and they are easily educated because information dissemination has been made easier. This is made possible through globalization. James defines globalization as the process of interaction between people from one country to another and how they exchange goods, ideas, and culture and integrate different governments across natural boundaries. As an instrument of globalization, the use of internet resulted to interconnectedness and interdependence of the world. The global divides developed, transitioning industrial production to lower cost labor sources, international media, and expanding international trade and communication have made the world smaller in some ways, but have also widened the gap between states by increasing impoverished countries' reliance on wealthier nations.
Good day, everyone. I am Injin Kadip Vergara. I am here to discuss why is global divides the North and the South. And for the continuation for this report, I am the third representers. So, why is global divides in the North and the South? In the 1980s, the brand line was developed as a way of showing how the world was geographically split into relatively richer and poorer nations. According to this model, richer countries are almost all located in northern hemisphere, with the exception of Australia and New Zealand. Poor countries are mostly located in tropical regions in the southern hemisphere. However, over the time, it was realized that this view was too simplistic. Countries such as Argentina, Malaysia, and Botswana all have above global average GDP per capita, yet still appear in the global south. Conversely, countries such as Ukraine appear to be now amongst the poorer set of countries by the same measure. Despite very significant development gains globally which have raised many millions of people out of absolute poverty, there is substantial evidence that inequality between the world's richest and poorest countries is widening in 1820. Western Europe's per capita income was 3 times bigger than Africa's, but by 2000, it was 13 times as big. In addition, in 2013, Oxfam reported that the richest 85 people in the world own the same amount of wealth as the poorest half of world's population. Today, the world is much more complex than the brand line depicts, as many poorer countries have experienced significant economic and social development. However, inequality within countries has also been growing, and some commentators now talk of a global north and a global south, referring respectively to richer or poorer communities which are found both within between countries. Like, for example, Wales, India is still home to the largest concentration of poorer people in a single nation. It also has a very sizable middle class and a very rich elite. There are many causes for these inequalities, including the availability of natural resources, different levels of health and education, the nature of a country's economy and its industrial sectors, international trading policies, access to markets, how countries are governed, and international relationship between countries, conflict between countries and countries' vulnerability to natural hazards and climate change.
Good day everyone, I'm Anthony Mark Zulueta from Group 2, and my topic is all about what is the difference between Third World and the Global South. So first, as term Third World and the Global South interchangeably, the North, also called the First World, and the South emerged during the 1970s in the recognition of the greater economics and the political power of the Third World, and in reaction to growing dissatisfaction with earlier terms, which are increasingly seen as pejorative. People refer to the two as Third World and South First World North because the Global North is the more affluent and developed, whereas the Global South is less developed and often poorer. How does the Global North and Global South differ in economy and population? The Global North is defined as the rich and the developed region, while the Global South is the poorest and less developed South countries have suffered many economic crises, while North countries don't have many serious economic problems. What is the relationship between the Global and South Third World? The phrase Global South refers broadly to the regions of Latin America, Asia, Africa, and Oceania. It is one of a family of terms including Third World and Periphery that denote regions outside Europe and the North America. Mostly, do not all, low income and often politically or culturally marginalized. The term world was originally coined in the times of the Cold War to distinguish those nations that are neither aligned with the West or NATO nor with the East and the communist bloc. Today, the term is often used to describe developing countries of Africa, Asia, Latin America, and Australia, and Oceania. Why global divided the North and South? There are many causes for these inequalities, including the availability of natural resources, different levels of health and education, the natures of a country, economy, and its industrial sectors, international tradings, policies, and access to the markets. How countries are governed and international relationship between. Why this country called the Poor South? These countries lack resources that are essential to develop at the same rate as others. Unfortunately, countries in the global south suffers many poverty, lack of human rights, and the depletion of abused natural resources. And the third world is a developing country, is a sovereign states with a less developed industrial base and a low human development index relative to other countries. However, this definition is not universally agreed upon. There is also no clear agreement on which countries fit this category.
So, good day everyone. I am Engine Cadet Libaton Clay Jade. I am going to report about the definition or what is Global South. So, Global South, it refers broadly to the regions of Latin America, Asia, Africa, and Oceania. Refer to less economy developed countries. Also, it is a broad term that comprises a variety of states with diverse levels of economic, cultural, and political influence in the international order. Countries such as Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East are part of the Global South. So these countries are certainly known as the developing countries, which means the gross domestic product or GDP. Human Development Index or HDI and generally standard of living within these countries are considered low grade to that of countries in the north. So is Global South is poor. Unfortunately, countries in the Global South suffer from poverty, lack of human rights, and the depletion and abuse of natural resources. Progress won't occur in these countries unless outside and inside forces make positive changes for well-being of its people and its environment. So, as you can see the picture above, the blue is symbolizes the first world or industrialized democracies. The red one symbolizes the communist world, and the green is symbolizes the third world or developing countries. So, why do people say global south? First, people generally take the global south to refer to poor and or socio-economically marginalized parts of the world. The World Bank Income Per Capita Index has been a popular proxy for mapping aggregate developing levels and for comparing countries and regions over time. So the phrase Global South refers to broadly to the regions of Latin America, Asia, Africa, and Oceania. Global South refers also not just to the hemispheric south. It has been general rubric for decolonized nations located roughly south of the old colonial centers of power. So next, what are the challenges of global south? The megacities of the global south have major socio-economic and environmental problems, such as increase in slum dwellers, air and water pollution, resource depletion, and rising urban property. So these challenges is very common in the global south because there is no positive changes for the well-being of its people and its environment. So that's all about my report.
So, hi everyone, good day. I'm Indian Cadet Katpagan. I'm here to discuss or to report the continuation of the topic about what is the difference between third world and the global south. Define the term global south, differentiate the global south from the third world, and analyze how a new conception of a global relation emerged from the experience of Latin American countries. So, for that, what defines third world? A third world country is an outdated and offensive term for a developing nation characterized by a population with a low and middle income and other socioeconomic indicator. So it means that the modern definition of the third world is used to classify countries that are poor or developing. Countries that are part of the third world are generally characterized by: first is high rates of poverty, second is economic or political instability, and third is high mortality rates. So, third world is an outdated and derogatory phrase that has been used historically to describe a class of economically developing nation. It is part of a four-part segmentation that was used to describe the world's economies by economic status. Third world falls behind first world and second world but was ahead of fourth world, though fourth world countries were highly recognized at all. Today, the preferred terminology is a developing nation, an underdeveloped country, or a low and a middle income country. So what is the difference between global south and global north? The theory behind the global north versus global south categorization is that global north countries are supposedly more developed, wealthier, and usually north of equator. Global south countries tend to be in the process of industrializing or developing poor and south of equator. So the equator is an imaginary line around the middle of the earth. It is halfway between the north and south poles and divide the earth into the northern and southern hemisphere. The two economic words that cut across the globe, these are the global north and the global south. That while the global north represent the economically developed societies of Europe, North America, Australia, Israel, South Africa, amongst others. The global south represent the economically backward countries of Africa, India, China, Brazil, Mexico, amongst others, while global north countries are wealthy, technology advanced, politically stable, and aging as their societies tend towards zero population growth, and opposite is the case with global south countries. While global south countries are agrarian, haste dependent, economically and politically on the global north. The global north has continued to dominate and direct the global south in international trade politics. So in the 1980s, the Brand Line was developed as a way of showing how the world was geographically split in the relatively richer and poorer nation. So in the richer countries are almost all located in the northern hemisphere with the exception of Australia and New Zealand. And in the poorer countries are almost and in the poorer countries are mostly located in tropical region and in the southern hemisphere. However, over time it was realized that this view was too simplistic. Countries such as Argentina, Malaysia, and Botswana all have above global average in GDP or gross domestic product per capita or PPP, yet still appear in the global south. Conversely, countries such as Ukraine appear to be now amongst a poorer set of countries by the same measure. How does the global north and the global south differ in economy and population? The global north is defined as the rich and developed region, while the global south is poorer and less developed. The south countries have suffered many economic crises, while north countries don't have many serious economic problems. So in the south countries have a difficult time importing and accessing world markets because the majority lacks navigable rivers or efficient roads and rail networks. This is a major disadvantage because this affects the cost of importing things that are necessary and the countries can't afford the costs to import them. Also, because the global north countries are better developed and more advanced, they are more advanced technologically speaking according to Kiglick Charles 2009. Differences in technological aspect has separated significantly the global north countries from the south. South countries have not advanced or progressed from their indigenous culture. This means the south countries have not advanced and progressed technologically speaking, and global north countries have advanced rapidly in this aspect. Because countries have not advanced technologically, they have to depend in cooperation from the north. Maybe south countries can't advance because of lack of resources, so they have to turn up to cooperation from the north. This also means south countries can't advance because the north corporation focuses on their problems and don't care about the south countries' problem. However, south countries don't have an opinion because they lack economical resources since their main focus is agriculture. So why there is a global north and global south? As term, the north, also called the first world, and the south emerged during the 1970s in recognition of the greater economic and political power of the third world and in reaction to the growing dissatisfaction with earlier terms which were increasingly seen as pejorative. So today world, we need to know why there is a global north and global south. Because global north and global south referring respectively to richer or poorer communities which are found both within and between countries. So in the broad line, depict as many poorer countries have experienced significant economic and social development. So there are many causes for these inequalities including the availability of natural resources, different level of health and education, the nature of country's economy and its industrial sector. International trading policies are access to market, how countries are governed and international relationship between countries, conflict within and between countries, and countries' vulnerability to natural hazard and climate change. And that's all. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. My name is Engine Cadet Roma Kevin Luis, and I'm gonna discuss the how did the Latin America become part of the global economy. In the late 19th century, much of Latin America was integrated into the world economy as
as an exporter of commodities. When Europe and United States experience an increase of industrialization, they realize the value of the raw materials in Latin America, which caused Latin American countries to move towards export economies. This economic growth also catalyzed social and political developments that constituted a new order. The Latin American experience argues that democratic stability requires policies that limit the society's degree of substantive economic and social inequality. A case in point is Latin America, long recognized as having one of the world's most unequal distributions of income and wealth. In the post-Cold War world, Latin America and the Caribbean have emerged as more important than ever. The dynamism of the region's cultures, its prodigious and agricultural capacity, and vast energy reserves have made the region's place in the global community more significant than at any time since the colonial era. How does globalization affect Latin America? Many citizens of Latin America, over time since globalization has begun to affect the countries, believe their country is becoming fragmented and their values lost as increased numbers of immigrants bring new customs and international trade and communication penetrate all corners of the country. And the positive effects of globalization include trade, production, labor market, and demographic improvement, while the negative effects comprise of divergence of communities, increased transitional cross-border and rural-urban migration, and infrastructural deficit. How has Latin America benefited from globalization? The globalization has expanded the trade and investment relationships of Latin America. Non-manufacturing exports such as agriculture, mining, fishing, forestry, and ranching have increased. Primary products continue to dominate the mix of total merchandise exports in the majority of Latin American countries during the 1990s. Globalization replaced the state control over resources, production, and services with privatization strategies, deregulated and reformed financial markets, and shifted from inflexible labor markets to flexible ones. From closed domestic markets to open and free trades, and from restrictive institutions to more innovative management approaches, reductions in the state power provided a more technical, disciplined, and flexible national economy with a significant local, regional, national, and supranational variations. Where will Latin America's growth come from? Over the past 15 years, Latin America economies have posted average annual GDP growth of about 3%, far slower than growth in other developing regions. Almost 80% of Latin America's GDP growth over the past 15 years has come from strong labor inputs reflecting growing populations rather than rising productivity. Output per worker has risen at only 0.6% per year since 2000, one of the weakest productivity performances of any region in the world. The imperative to bolster growth is rising as three disruptive forces are set to combine to constrain Latin American growth. Falling fertility rates will undermine employment-led growth. The end of commodity price boom that has helped fuel the region's growth is another concern. In addition, there's a risk of increased protectionism that could weaken the exports component of growth. To counter the threat growth, we see four major imperatives that Latin America countries should consider prioritizing. Expand high value added activities across key value chains by removing obstacles to competitiveness, promote the efficient adoption of digital and automation technologies, address the pressure created by a declining labor force by strengthening the link between education and employment, and narrowing gender gaps, and invest in long-term drivers of productivity growth, including strengthening macroeconomic fundamentals, stepping up infrastructure investment, and broadening access to capital. That's all. Thank you.